Hey everyone, Blind Spell here, early in the morning, or early-ish in the morning. It's actually really not at all, it's noon for me, but early in the morning for Flynn, who's here with us today, to go over his pick at spot number 6. So without further ado, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. Oh god, that's the wrong thing, and I left the draft pick sound going. Okay, you get the draft pick sound twice, that's for you, Alan McNatt. But hey, we're here with Flynn, we got Jackson, Smith, and Jigba at our pick 106. This is off center. Oh my goodness, it's a mess. But Flynn, we're here, and JSN is your guy at 106. How's that feel?
Feels good, man. A lot of other people were talking about there's kind of a top six teardrop after that, and I agree. JSN is kind of the last guy in that tier for me. That has that real high end upside. So I'm excited to have him.
When we were talking about this beforehand, you kind of mentioned everybody knew it was Bijan 1, right? And that it's supposed to be, right, Richardson, Richardson, Young, 2, 3. Were you okay with Stroud and Jigba or Gibbs, whoever it was that came to you, or were you really hoping it was in Jigba?
No, I was okay with everybody. My team is still pretty RB needy, so Gibbs would have been nice, but Cam Hoon, snapped in, grabbed him up. That was a good move by him. But I was also really excited about JSN. The kind of numbers he put up at Ohio State a couple of years ago. Like if he can, you know, pick that up in the NFL, that could be huge.
When we were talking to Alan earlier this week about the picks, and originally, keep in mind, I wrote this question when you were 102 and not 106, but you've made some really good trades here moving back. Alan said that he was not planning on re signing Daniel Jones, and then he sent him to you to go up from 101, or to go from 102 to 101. So you picked up Daniel Jones in 102. Now, other people are saying that they think that Daniel Jones is the best contract in the league or one of the best quarterback contracts in the league. Where do you fall on that range? I mean, Daniel Jones is probably not the most impressive NFL quarterback, but for a contract league in the contract, he's good. But like, where do you kind of fall on that spectrum of I wouldn't re-sign him to this is the best contract in the league? Because there are people on both sides of that, it seems.
So I don't know. I've been pretty vocal in the past that I really value quarterbacks in like super flex leagues. And then Daniel Jones, he's kind of in that QB2, solid QB2 range, which is really valuable still. And that contract, yeah, it's like a steal, I think. And I'm trying to get ahead of the contract nightmares that I think we're all going to be in the next couple of years coming up. So to kind of lock him in on a deal like that, and then going further, I don't know if he's going to be good enough to enter like holdout stage. I think he'll be
Right.
good, but maybe not that good. So I think I might be able to hold him at that value for a long time.
So for those of you that don't know his contract, this year will be $9, then 16, 26, 41, 67 for somebody who should be, I would think, an automatic super flex start every week. I mean, maybe there's somebody else you end up with on your team that will push him out of that spot, right? But on most teams, I think he'd be a super flex auto start, unless he's got like a terrible matchup. So you're one of the only two people to use a 5 year re-sign, and I think that was a very good use of it there for sure. Speaking of contracts and signing and letting people go and kind of almost contract hell, as you kind of alluded to, how have you personally navigated that in the division of death? You've had to be in this weird situation where all four teams came out looking really strong, and then you kind of picked up that everybody else was pushing for the in, so you're the first one to say, okay, maybe not me this time. But you've still bought at the right time. We looked back at the trade deadline where you made a couple moves at the trade deadline to do a couple buys. You've had a couple buys here recently, including picking up DeAndre Hopkins yesterday or the day before, who is on your team, which is always nice. How have you navigated when to buy, when to sell, and when the right time is for you specifically?
Um, some of it was contract related, for the league. Some of it is just kind of trying to read the tea leaves and see where players were going. Like Alvin Kamara last year, I did not have good vibes on him to start the season, so I offloaded him to Unicorn, fairly early on. I think Cade kind of raked me over the coals a little bit for that trade, but in hindsight, I think it was a good move. Buying back in, I just tried to kind of look at guys that I thought had a lot of opportunity, like Hollywood Brown. I bought in towards the end of last season. Algier, I definitely liked, but Bijan going to the Falcons torpedoed that one a little bit. Although I do think he still has some value. Um, just I don't know, just kind of trying to follow my instincts, really.
Yeah. When it comes to your instinct, you had 5 second-round picks. You're now down to 3 after picking up Hollywood Brown. Do you know what your plans are for those other 3? Do you plan on using them as trade pieces? Do you plan on selecting? Obviously, we're so far away from what the draft board looks like then, but you were able to pick up Hollywood kind of out of nowhere. Um, do you plan on trying to look for more deals like that or making those selections?
I'm definitely open to more deals. Contract wise, it has to make sense. I can't. I'm starting to get into a position where I can't absorb, big contracts without
Right.
having to make some other moves. I'm almost adopting like a Moneyball kind of mentality for people who follow baseball.
Yeah.
Just trying to find the value in the lower kind of tier contracts. Um, so and I just kind of want to see where the board falls too. There could be some guys that slip that I really like that I'll try to pick up in the second round. But I am open to trading still.
In a dream world, what do you think the best case scenario is for you with having those picks?
For the second round picks,
Yeah.
I think getting guys that are probably maybe I'll find a guy that exceeds expectations and becomes like a surefire starter. But realistically, like flex guys, bye week type of starters. Maybe in year one, guys that can develop, later on.
What do you think the worst case scenario becomes with those picks? I mean, obviously, I think the worst case scenario is you pick somebody and then 3 days later he gets arrested for drinking and driving, right? But like a realistic, almost like how you kind of said, a realistic best case scenario is they become good flex pieces for you. What do you think that realistic worst case scenario is?
Kind of like a Denzel Mims type of guy, where he was good draft capital, went to the Jets, didn't seem like he was primed to kind of be like their guy, and then he just turns into nothing, and he's just roster clogger, and you don't want to drop him because you're like maybe he'll pick it up, and he just never does.
Yeah, those are the worst. When it's one of the ones that's like, well, I can't cut this guy, but I can't play this guy at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's always nice when they eventually pan out. I think Jordan Love's like that, right? Where Jordan Love has been sitting on people's benches for 3 years, and you're like, well, I can't cut this guy, but there's no way I ever plan on starting him. But here we are, finally, a few years later. Um, One of the last couple questions I have for you. When you look at your roster specifically, I think your quarterback room is good. I think your tight end room is good, especially. I think there's increased expectations for Pitts this year, especially with Bijan. Um, are you more concerned about what your running back room looks like overall, or are you more excited for the upside that your wide receiver room has? So, to run through some of those names, Najee, Kyron Williams, Tyler Algier, Jarek McKinnon. So Najee, obviously a down year. The other 3 guys are the number 2 probably on their team. And then the upside for your receivers, Judy, Ayuk, now Brown, Wandale Robinson, John Mechie, Curtis Samuel, who I'm sure you'll trade back to Brown out here in a week or two. But there's a lot of upside there, but a lot of scariness on your running backs. Which one do you think about more? Do you think about how excited you are for the upside or how nervous you are for the potential downside, I guess, of the running backs?
Uh, I probably the downside of the running backs. Although, I'm pretty excited about Miles Sanders. Not so much the talent of Miles Sanders, but the situation.
Yeah,
As you being an Eagles fan, I don't think I can sell you on how good Miles Sanders is. But
right.
he going to Carolina, I think he's probably barring injury a lock for like an RB2, and I think he's got even the upside of an RB1, just being used in that offense with not a lot of other great weapons and not a lot of competition in the RB room.
Right.
Um, the wide receiver, I do get excited about that, but I think it might have been Cam Hoon who did the wide receiver rankings. He noted that I don't really have like a surefire wide receiver one.
Right.
There's a lot of decent, twos in there, maybe guys that could have some upside, but there's not a lot of high end talent there. So I like the depth of the wide receivers for sure, though.
Do you think that JSN immediately comes in and is the number one guy? I know his receiver room is convoluted out there in Seattle with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but do you see him being your number one? The only one I could see maybe is you would argue over that is probably Judy. Maybe if Hopkins gets traded, you've got Hollywood Brown. Um, do you where do you see JSN fitting in? I mean, he's going to be a starter for you, I'm sure. But where do you see him kind of fitting in? Our sleeper chat is blowing up right now, by the way,
Yeah, I
as
noticed
people are
that too.
already starting to make trades, and it makes me nervous. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get in the way. But where do you see
No,
JSN sliding in? Do you see him as your number
super
one or
on the
two?
screen.
Yeah.
Um, JSN, I think I actually don't know how much I expect from him in year one because he's joining, like in Seattle, pretty locked in receiver room. You have DK Metcalf and you have Tyler Lockett. I do think he's set to inherit that Tyler Lockett role in like the next year or two, though.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Tyler Lockett has put up some gaudy numbers in that role historically, and I see a lot of kind of similarities in their game. So kind of remains to be seen where he's going to fit into that offense. So he might be kind of a red shirt in year one.
The last question I have for you are patented, not patented, but God forbid, our patented fill in the blank question. There have been, and I think you could even agree with this, there have been a lot of questions around how strong bflynn is, right? There are some people who are of the belief that all four teams of the division death make it. There are some that feel like, okay, maybe Dan Flashes is number 6 or Diamond Dogs is number 6, whatever the case may be, right? So here's your question, fill in the blank. At the conclusion of week 14, when the playoff brackets are made, I will be playing in blank. Are you playing in the toilet bowl bracket? Are you playing in the extra pick bracket for 5 and 6, toilet bowl for 1 through 4 of worst teams? Or are you playing in the playoffs where you're competing for it all?
That's hard.
I know it's a tough one because there's like a fine line between not wanting to sound like a dick, but I'm here for it.
If I'm being a realist, like the division of death arms race went a little crazy with the acquiring players. So all of the other teams ahead of me probably got stronger. Excuse me, as I did. So extra pick bracket is probably where I'm most likely to be this year. I think I'll step up out of the toilet bowl. Logistically speaking, getting all 4 of us teams in the division of death into the playoffs is going to be hard, but not impossible. And I still have some roster building to do. But the way football, throws curves at us throughout the season, and a lot of, there's a lot of time to kind of settle that. But right now, I think extra pick bracket's the most likely
Do you
landing spot.
do you think if you make it there that's yours? Like that 1.13 of 2024 is a lock for you if you make it there?
I mean, no. I mean, I don't have the confidence that Alan McNatt has apparently about my roster, the swag here. But it's week in, week out. There's so much variance with the scoring that it could go either way.
My favorite thing about Alan McNatt is both times we've had him on, he's talked all this trash, and then 5 minutes later, after the video comes out in sleeper chat, he's like, "I'm sorry." Like both times, he's like, "I didn't mean to do that." So, he's a showman. He's here for the sake of content, which is great. Yeah, he gets hyped up looking at his team, and then immediately feels the need to apologize to everybody. So that's interesting. But that's going to do it for us today. Any final thoughts or comments that you have? We are going to move to talking to Webster Tigers hopefully sometime this afternoon, and then we'll wait for 108 until we'll be back on track. But any final thoughts that you have?
No, I will. Little insight is I had a trade with Zoink Scoob for that 103 like sitting there waiting for me. And then I had something happen at work, like suddenly come up that I had to go attend to, and then Unicorn swooped in and stole that right out from under me. So I almost had the 103 there too, and I don't know if I should have made that trade, but I probably would have at the time. So it's good job, Unicorn. But
what was the trade that you had on the table?
It was Rubber Raggy wanted Kenny Pickett, and it was a couple of seconds along with that, and it would have netted me 103. Might have been 3 seconds. I'd have to look at the transaction again. And I probably would have done it at the time, but I don't know if I would have done it with a day of hindsight behind me.
Right. I wonder if I do this live.
Yeah.
Here, fuck it. Accept. I just traded for 108, so that's cool.
Oh shit.
Yeah, we'll do a live on camera. Raggy and I have been trading for a while, so as soon as you said Raggy, and you had a deal, he sent me a counter offer. We've been going back and forth for 2 or 3 days now, so
Yeah.
here we are. So that was cool. That was cool to have that happen organically like that. But hey, I'm not sure how I feel about the trade, but I just unloaded a bunch of cap space, so I'm excited about it for that piece.
That's cap space is going to be at a premium. Oh shit, this is a big one. Man.
It's a big one. Yeah, Sutton was in there originally for more picks, but I just offloaded about $160 in cap space this year and 200 something almost next year. So I'm happy with that.
No, that'll be big for you.
Hopefully, we'll see. Now I'm going to just draft a bust at 108. We'll see how it goes. All right, that'll do it. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Good luck with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and hopefully I'll meet you in the playoffs if it all goes well.
Absolutely.
All right, have a good one.
See you there.